million, they say. 6:24, we're about a month away from celebrating Pride Week in our province. The region of Waterloo, Ontario, just wrapped up their celebrations. Despite the distance, a trans activist from this province felt compelled to go there. Jennifer McCreath's reasons twofold. One, to make audiences with like-minded activities, and two, to keep trans issues in the headlines. And she took time to speak to Claudette Barnes.
So, Jennifer, what do you hope to accomplish in Kitchener or in Ontario itself?
I think the major issue I'm looking at right now is that we've got trans activists in pretty much every province stepping up to the plate and doing a lot of great work, activism, fighting government policies. At the same time, though, there's not a lot of communication and collaboration amongst ourselves. As a former government policy writer, the three famous words are beg, borrow, and steal. And if we're all on the same page, but we're all reading different books, I think it would be better if we work together. And I think another major challenge I'm seeing is the trans communities in the two big cities, Toronto and Vancouver, are literally, by volume, they're taking over and they're speaking for the whole country without necessarily understanding that some of the issues facing trans people in the East Coast or in smaller towns are very different. When you're talking about smaller towns, there might only be one or two trans people, and they're terrified to come out publicly. Sadly, I've seen a lot of my best friends in the trans communities in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia pack their bags and leave and say, I can't make it here. I'm moving to Toronto. And I've lived in Toronto, actually, for many years, but I kind of like Newfoundland, and I don't think people should have to leave.
So what would be an example of why they would have to leave?
I think two of the big issues. One, lack of access to quality health care can be a challenge. Doctors who are not educated on trans issues. Sometimes it's the government policies. We will not help you unless you go to Toronto and go through a assessment in one of these clinics. Employment's also another huge challenge, and sadly I must admit that I've had significant challenge finding gainful employment after I came out publicly as Jennifer in Newfoundland. I went from having a great job to struggling to find anything. So I think people are leaving for employment, and I'll be honest, part of the reason I'm touring around is to scope out potential work opportunities for myself as well. But I guess ultimately at the same time, it shouldn't matter which province you live in, which town. I mean, rural Canada is beautiful, and there's no reason people shouldn't be allowed to live there and flourish.
So how would you say our province would fare in terms of accepting transgendered people in society compared to other provinces you visited?
I think it's difficult to put a blanket ranking on a province as a whole. I think you got to look at the local levels. I know that within St. John's, between myself and several other recent additions to the trans community, we've seen a lot of education and a lot of awareness about the issues. I think the same could be held true for most. If you go to the capital city in any province, you're probably going to find a better understanding and acceptance of trans issues than you would in a smaller rural environment. Ultimately, though, a lot of the issues we face fall under provincial jurisdiction at government policy levels. And I would say Newfoundland and all four of the East Coast provinces lag behind the Ontarios and the British Columbias. And again, that's kind of the main reason I created the East Coast Trans Alliance 4 years ago, with the same concept of bringing trans activists in the four eastern provinces together to brainstorm as well as to solicit advice and help from some of the activists and the allies. The Ontario government on all sides of the House are trans supportive, and there's a lot of provinces where it's still a political issue where one party supports us and the other one doesn't.
Well, Jennifer, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with us about this morning.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on.
Jennifer McCreath, local trans activist and founder of the East Coast Trans Alliance. Her summer tour continues in various provinces, including St. John's. Next month, she says trans issues are different from gay and lesbian issues, and she hopes to keep trans issues alive in the media, especially during Pride Week.
This is retired Captain Imelda Earle representing Her Majesty's Penitentiary on behalf of the Law Enforcement Torch Fund for Special Olympics. This year there will be runs and walks